There's a new arms race happening right now, but it's not on land or sea. It's hundreds of miles above our heads. It's this high-stakes game for control of space. And the Pentagon? They're scrambling to protect some of their most critical and, frankly, most vulnerable assets. And the thing is, the consequences for all of us down here, well, they're huge.
Okay, so let's start with a little thought experiment, just to get to the heart of why this all matters so much. What would actually happen if, say, tomorrow, the entire GPS network just stopped? Poof, gone. What would that look like? Well, the answer is kind of startling. You might think, oh, okay, my rideshare app wouldn't work, maybe I'd get lost. But it goes so much deeper than that. These space-based capabilities, especially GPS, they're like the invisible backbone of our entire modern world. We're talking military operations, banking systems, global shipping, even farming. All of it is completely tied to those tiny, precise signals coming from orbit. And for a long time, this incredible reliance we have was fine. It was okay, because space was a pretty peaceful place. But that's just not the case anymore. We are absolutely moving into a new and much more dangerous era where space is a highly contested domain, a potential battleground. Yeah, for decades, space was basically seen as a sanctuary, a safe zone. Well, that's over. Done. The Department of Defense is now openly admitting that adversaries are actively developing offensive space weapons. I mean, weapons specifically designed to target U.S. and allied satellites. The game has totally, completely changed.
So the big question is, right? How does a massive organization like the Department of Defense, the DoD, adapt to this new reality? Well, to really get a handle on their new strategy, we've got to first take a look at their old playbook. And let's be honest, it was incredibly slow. Okay, so for years, the Pentagon used this process called the Major Defense Acquisition Program, or MDAP. The best way to think about it is like the battleship model of building things. It was designed for these just enormous, super complex, multi-billion-dollar projects that were expected to take a decade or even more to finish. And here's the problem. That traditional process, it was thorough, but it often became a trap. The Government Accountability Office, the GAO, found that it consistently led to huge cost increases and massive schedule delays. It was just way too slow for a world where technology and the threats we face can change in the blink of an eye. Take the OCX program, for example. This is the ground control system for our GPS satellites. The project fell so far behind schedule, and get this, the Air Force actually had to create 2 other temporary stopgap programs just to keep the current GPS system running. It's a perfect, almost unbelievable case study in how the old way was just failing.
So yeah, clearly something had to change. Something had to give. Faced with all these new threats and a process that was obviously broken, the DoD realized it just couldn't afford to wait a decade for new tech anymore. It needed a totally new approach, and it needed one fast. And the pivot they made was, well, it was dramatic. They moved away from that old, slow, rigid MDAP process to a brand new pathway called the Middle Tier of Acquisition, or MTA. The entire philosophy is different. The new motto is basically be fast, be flexible, and deliver new stuff in 5 years, not 15. But, and this is a big but, is all this new speed coming with some serious risks? So the whole goal of MTA is to shave years off development time. And it really boils down to focusing on 2 main things. First, rapid prototyping. Quickly building and testing new ideas to see what works. And second, rapid fielding. That's all about getting a working system into production in just 6 months, and then fully deployed out in the field within 5 years. Super ambitious. And this isn't just theory, by the way. We can see this new playbook in action right now. There's a really critical program called Next Gen OPIR. That's the Next Generation Missile Warning System. And it is using this exact fast-track path. The whole goal is to slash development time and hit this super aggressive 2025 launch date to counter new missile threats. But not so fast. This new need for speed culture isn't without its critics. In fact, a really important government watchdog is raising a big red flag, and they're asking a pretty crucial question. Is all this speed coming at the cost of basic accountability? Now, the watchdog we're talking about is the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. You can think of them as a nonpartisan referee for Congress. Their whole job is to audit the government and make sure our taxpayer money is being spent effectively. And you better believe they've been looking very, very closely at this new, faster process.
So, in a recent report, the GAO basically put out a warning. They said, look, while this MTA process is definitely faster, it comes with some really serious trade-offs. Specifically, it's missing a lot of the traditional reporting, monitoring, and this is key, the oversight that came with the old, slower way of doing things. And this quote from their report really gets to the core of the problem. It says the DoD hadn't developed a strategy to even collect data on these new programs. I mean, think about that. It makes it incredibly difficult for anyone, even the DoD itself, let alone Congress, to have any real visibility into whether these fast-moving projects are on track or on budget. In fact, the GAO took a close look at that missile warning program we just talked about, Next Gen OPIR. They found it's facing significant management and technical challenges, and that its super aggressive schedule is difficult to achieve. But here's the real kicker. The report also found that the program officials weren't even acknowledging these serious risks in their reports to Congress. That's a huge problem.
And all of this really brings us to the core dilemma for the Department of Defense and the brand new Space Force. It's this incredibly high-stakes balancing act they have to pull off, between speed on one side and safety and accountability on the other.
So the fundamental challenge really is this. How do you modernize quickly enough to counter threats that are very real and constantly evolving without just throwing away all the oversight you need to avoid hiding risks and making the same costly mistakes all over again? And that really leaves us with this final big question. In this new high-stakes space race, can the U.S. actually innovate fast enough to keep its edge without falling into the exact same traps of insane cost overruns and hidden problems that plagued it for decades? It's not an exaggeration to say that the security of our nation, both down here on the ground and up there in orbit, might just depend on the answer.